The federal Liberal tent is expanding. Longtime Conservative MP Marilyn Gladu has crossed the floor. Gladu is the 5th MP and the 4th Conservative to join the Liberal Party. This latest move brings the Liberals one seat short of a majority government, with 3 by-elections still to come next week.
One seat, that is all that stands between Mark Carney and a full majority government, and he did not get there through an election. He got there because the opposition is walking away from itself. 5 MPs, 4 of them Conservatives, all of them making the same decision independently that staying with Pierre Poilievre is no longer viable. And the MP who crossed today, Marilyn Gladu, was described by analysts as one of the most right-wing MPs in the entire Conservative caucus. Sometimes so far right that even Poilievre kept his distance from her positions, and she just joined the Liberals. Let that settle for a moment. Because what is happening in Canadian Parliament right now is not normal political movement. This is a collapse.
That is, the wheels on the bus for Mr. Poilievre are falling off. This is not a good day for him. This is the 4th MP who has decided that they no longer want to sit in his caucus. And, you know, the Prime Minister, and we'll talk about his governing record in a second, continues to attract members of the House of Commons from right across the country. I see the graphic on the screen here. It's got the 5 members who crossed the floor from Nunavut, from Atlantic Canada, 2 from Ontario, Ms. Gladu today, and Matt Jenneru from Alberta. And from the Conservative perspective, this is not a good.
The wheels on the bus are falling off. That is not a political commentator. That is CBC's chief political correspondent. And she is describing something that in Canadian political history has essentially never happened at this speed. A sitting government gaining a majority not through an election, but through individual defections from the opposition. 1 MP at a time. Nunavut, Atlantic Canada, Ontario, Alberta, every region of the country, different backgrounds, different political histories, different ideological positions within the Conservative coalition, arriving at the same conclusion, that the future is not with Poilievre, and that is before 3 by-elections scheduled for Monday.
Scott, what do you make of yet another MP crossing the floor even before the by-election, something that you and I talked about was a possibility just the other day, and the fact that it's Marilyn Gladu?
Number of things. First of all, you're correct. It is before the by-elections, which are slated for Monday, but it is also on the eve of the Liberal Party's National Convention in Montreal this weekend. Rumors have been buzzing like hornets for days now that some Conservative MPs have been in conversations with the Prime Minister's office. I always partially wondered whether, as sort of a setup for the convention, as a kind of celebration of the convention, if we might see this kind of move, another floor crosser. And I'm not even positive we're finished yet, but I'm not surprised insofar as I thought that the Liberals were making this play in advance of the by-elections, in advance of that national convention. Marilyn Gladu did surprise me. Why? She can get elected as Conservative. She's been in the House of Commons for 11 years, won 4 elections, actually considered, sort of partially ran for the leadership at one point until she was more or less booted out for a series of technical rules-based reasons. She's seen as a pretty hardcore conservative, so that did surprise me. But maybe what that tells you is the breadth of people who are in discussions with the Liberals and considering this.
I'm not even positive we're finished yet. That is the line that should make every Conservative strategist very nervous. Because 1 defection is a story, 2 defections is a trend, 5 defections from different regions, different backgrounds, different positions within the party, with the analysts saying more conversations are happening right now. That is not a trend. That is a structural collapse. And the timing on the eve of the Liberal National Convention, the night before 3 by-elections, is not accidental. Here is the full breakdown of what is happening, why it is accelerating, and why this moment matters far beyond the borders of Canada. In Canadian politics, floor crossings happen. Individual MPs occasionally switch parties for personal reasons, riding specific issues, or moments of political tension. That is normal. That is part of how parliamentary systems work. But 5 MPs in less than a year after an election, 4 from the same opposition party, spanning every major region of the country. That is not normal. Political analysts are already using the word unprecedented to describe the speed of this movement. Because what you typically need to generate this kind of momentum is time. A government needs years to prove itself credible enough to attract opposition MPs. It needs sustained polling advantages. It needs visible leadership that makes the political risk of crossing the floor worth taking. Carney has done all of that in under a year. And that acceleration tells you something that the individual defection stories do not fully capture. This is not about 5 individual decisions. This is about a perception shift. The perception that Carney's Liberals represent stability, direction, and political viability, and that Poilievre's Conservatives represent the opposite. Here is the detail that makes today's crossing the most significant of all. Marilyn Gladu is not a moderate conservative. She is a chemical engineer, a credentialed professional, a politician described by the CBC correspondent as so far right that some of her positions were considered too extreme even within Poilievre's own caucus. And she just joined Mark Carney. Think about what that signals. This is not a soft conservative drifting toward a liberal government that moved toward the center. This is someone from the far right of the coalition making the calculation that Carney's government offers a more credible, more stable, more viable path forward than the party she has spent her political career inside. That is not a small signal. That is a seismic one. And the Prime Minister highlighted her professional credentials in his introduction, which was deliberate, because the message being sent to Canada and to the world is not just that the Liberals are gaining seats. It is that the people joining them are serious, credentialed people making serious, deliberate decisions, not desperate opportunists, not people with nowhere else to go, people with choices who looked at both options and chose Carney. Here is the dynamic that explains why this is not stopping. Every floor crossing changes the calculation for every other MP who is sitting on the fence. Because once it becomes politically viable to cross the floor, once it becomes something that a credible, experienced MP can do without destroying their reputation, the risk calculation shifts for everyone watching. The first crossing is hard, the second is easier. The fifth is a signal that the door is open and people are walking through it. And the analyst confirmed what everyone in Ottawa is already whispering. Conversations are happening between Conservative MPs and the Prime Minister's office right now, which means the 5 we know about may not be the number that matters. The number that matters is whatever comes next. And on the eve of 3 by-elections, with the Liberal National Convention in Montreal this weekend, the timing of whatever comes next could not be more deliberate. Here is where this stops being a domestic story and becomes a global one. Carney is 1 seat away from a majority government. A majority government means full legislative control. No opposition votes needed, no confidence motion threats, no coalition negotiations. Complete authority over the direction of policy for the full term of Parliament. In a normal political environment, that is significant. In the current environment, with CUSMA renegotiation approaching on July 1st, with trade war tensions still unresolved, with Trump applying pressure across multiple fronts, it is transformational because a minority government can be pressured, a divided parliament can be influenced, an opposition that is losing its own members to the government is visible proof that the pressure is not working. But a majority government, backed by rising public support, expanding political alliances, and the kind of internal momentum that is generating floor crossings from across the political spectrum, is an entirely different counterpart for Donald Trump to deal with. The analyst made the point directly. A Canada led by a stable majority government under Carney is less vulnerable to pressure, less dependent on compromise, far more capable of acting independently in its economic and strategic decisions, which means that as Carney strengthens his position, the room for external influence shrinks. Trump's approach to Canada has relied on 3 specific tools: leverage, unpredictability, pressure. A majority government backed by political consolidation is the answer to all 3 simultaneously. And Carney is 1 seat away from it. Step back and look at what Pierre Poilievre's week actually contains. 1 year ago, he had a 25-point polling lead. Today, as he is trailing by 14 points. 1 year ago, he had a united caucus and a clear path to power. Today, His fourth MP has left. His chief political correspondent is saying the wheels are coming off. His internal rumors suggest more conversations are happening. And 3 by-elections are scheduled for Monday in ridings that could push Carney over the majority threshold without a single floor crossing. This is what political collapse looks like in real time. Not loud, not dramatic, not a single defining moment, just one MP at a time, people deciding that the future is somewhere else. And on the other side, a prime minister who started this year facing the full weight of American tariffs, a trade war, economic pressure, and a domestic opposition that had been building momentum for years, who is now 1 seat away from governing with full authority, not by attacking Poilievre, not by outmaneuvering him in a single debate, by being the kind of leader that people choose to walk toward, even when they started on the other side. 3 by-elections, Monday, 1 seat needed. And the analyst says he is not even sure the floor crossings are finished. Whatever happens on Monday, one thing is already true. The political landscape in Canada looks nothing like it did 1 year ago. And the person most responsible for that transformation is the one who spent that year applying pressure and calling Canada the 51st state. He built Carney, and Carney is 1 seat away. Subscribe to Canada Today for full coverage of the by-election results as they come in Monday, because what happens in those 3 ridings determines what Canada walks into the July 1st negotiations with. And that is the moment that matters. And if you find this helpful, hit like, subscribe, hit the bell.